Hi everybody, happy October. Chef Greg here. Today we're going to be making one of my favorite German dishes to make is Spaetzle, and we're going to serve that with some pickled cabbage and with some grilled knockwurst. Okay, so Spaetzle is very easy and not at all easy at the exact same time, and I'll show you. Because Spaetzle is basically the German answer to pasta. Okay, it's different. All the different German-speaking countries have their own version of this dish, and there's lots of different recipes. I'm going to show you the one that works best for me. I'm sure somebody has a better recipe. That's great. Send it to me. So basically, all versions of Spaetzle have two things. They have flour and they have eggs. Beyond that, it's up to you. Okay, so I've got some flour. About, I don't know, let's call that 3½ cups. And we've got some eggs. Now the rule of thumb is 1 egg per cup of flour. But as I said, everybody has their own version. We're gonna go with 4 eggs. And if we're feeling crazy, we're gonna add another one. Let's get that. Okay. So, what we're doing here is adding some eggs, some salt, a little nutmeg, and a little water. Now some recipes call for milk. Some call for beer. Some call for sparkling water, which I think is interesting. I've never tried that one. They're all really depends on what you're doing with it and what your preference is. And so we're going to show you 2 different ways to make Spaetzle, and then we're going to cook it up, and then we're going to eat it. Okay. So basically what you're making is a batter of these sorts of things. And because this is a batter, this is technically like a type of dough. And so what that means is you have to work it. So if we were making bread or we were making pasta, we would knead the dough. And so what we're doing right now is basically kneading, only we're using a whisk. Now traditionally, you would use a wooden spoon for this part. But the health department sort of frowns upon that. They're not a fan of using wooden utensils. They're hard to sanitize. They're hard to keep clean. Nobody wants splinters in their food. So we use this. So my apologies to any German-speaking people who prefer a wooden spoon. So what we're looking for here is something that's sort of smooth and satiny. Let's give it a little more flour. I may have. And shiny. It should have some elasticity as well. And when you start to see a little shine coming on it, smooth and satiny, you'll know you're just about ready. So what's happening here is we're developing the gluten. So there's a couple of different components to the proteins that make up flour. And when you work them like this, they develop into gluten, which is not a bad thing. Gluten helps give structure to things that are cooked with flour. Okay. So we're just about there. All right. Now, first we'll do it the hard way. So we've got boiling water here. And we've got some ice water here. Okay. Okay, we're ready to make them. So we start with the cutting board. Now traditionally a wooden board is used and a knife, but I find once again the health department is not crazy about using wood, and I found this board to actually be perfect. Okay, so we've got our wet board. We're going to take some of our nice gooey dough. All right, we spread it thin and cut. So what we're doing is spreading the dough thin and then cutting pieces of it into the batter. And this is very easy to do for a family of 6, 4, 2, whatever you are. Not a lot of fun to do for 300 residents, which is why we have the other way of doing it. We're spreading it out, cutting it into the board. And you'll see here that they're starting to rise to the top. Now, a real German chef would probably laugh at my technique. That's okay. I don't mind being laughed at. I worked with several German chefs, and they all have their own version of this, and they all claim that their way is right. Okay, so you see we've got these little thin ribbons. Some are not so thin. It always takes me a while to get into the groove here. I'm keeping the board wet so it'll slide in there. So basically little pasta or dumplings, depending on what you want to call it. Okay, that was a big one. Dough might be a little wet, but that's okay. When you see them all irregular like this, you can say, oh, you know, chef didn't do it right. Or you can say, look, they're homemade. You can tell by how regular they are, okay? So once they rise to the top, they're basically done. So we've got these nice little Spaetzle, and we're going to put them in ice water to cool them down. And there we go. All right. So that was pretty easy to make what looks like about, I don't know, half a cup of pasta. But once again, making a lot, kind of a problem. So let's try another way. Put this down here. So let's add a little more water. Make it even thinner. Once again, nice and stretchy. You want that nice elasticity there. But for this next one, we want it to be a little bit thinner. Okay. I think that'll work. Now, this is a Spaetzle maker. Thank you to Mr. Hoffman, who gave me this long ago, and then it was lost and it was recently found. I couldn't find it last week when this was on the menu, so I ended up making about 2 gallons of Spaetzle by hand the old way. So here's the new way. We take our Spaetzle maker, which is really just a board with holes in it, okay? See? We lay it over the top. Take our ladle. Ladle it in here. Let's give them some more. And look at that. It's just falling down into the dough, into the water. Much easier. Not quite as sexy, but same idea. Okay. It does make a bit of a mess. Okay, and once again, when they rise to the top, they're done. Water here, not the best boil. But these have a little bit different look to them. See, it's all kind of smaller and shorter like that. If we wanted to argue over semantics, there's another dish called Knöffel, and I'm sure I'm saying that wrong, which basically translates into small buttons because that's what somebody thinks these look like. I don't think anybody really cares. They taste exactly the same. So let's add that in. That was much easier. Okay. So, and what we're going to do, once these have cooled down a bit, let's let them drain. Okay, so our pasta has cooled off in the water. This is what's called shocking. When you shock something is when you dump it into very cold ice water. And we're gonna let that drain as much as we can, get all the water out of it. Okay. So meanwhile, we're gonna saute this really quick. So what I've got here is some drawn butter and some chives. I suppose you could do this with olive oil, but I don't think it would be quite as good and not quite the same. So, get our oil nice and hot. Spaetzle in the pan. Just let that get nice and brown. Okay, it already smells really, really good. And the last thing we're going to do is what's called Krautsalat. Krautsalat is so easy, I'm not even going to show you how to make it. Okay, but this is basically what it is. I've taken shredded cabbage, I've added it to some rice vinegar and a little bit of salt, and then that's it. You have to leave it for about an hour or two to sort of soak, and what happens is it wilts the cabbage a little bit. Okay. And to that wilted cabbage, we're going to add some onions. Okay. We're going to add a little bit of oil. We're going to toss it together. And we're going to add a little bit of ground caraway. Caraway adds a nice touch to this, but nobody likes caraway seeds in their teeth, so we use ground caraway. So I'll tell you the story about the Krautsalat. When I was younger, I had a friend whose parents were from Germany and had dinner at her house, and it was absolutely delicious, and I wanted the recipe, and her mother, you know, she would show me, but she insisted I was saying it wrong, and so I had to learn how to say Krautsalat, and I had to say it correctly. I don't think I ever did get it correctly, but I was pretty proud of myself. So I went around, you know, telling everybody about this new dish that I'd heard, and I would say it correctly all the time, Krautsalat, because it was so impressive. Later on, it was pointed out to me that Krautsalat just means cabbage salad, and there's lots of different recipes, and so I shouldn't be so proud of myself. Anyway, it's delicious, okay? And this is all it is. So now we have our Spaetzle, which is nice and brown. Doesn't need a lot. I'm gonna add some chives because I can't help myself. Okay. And let's eat. On the grill here, we've got a nice knockwurst, okay? Knockwurst and bratwurst are very, very similar. They're sort of kissing cousins. Basically, a knockwurst is made from pork and from beef, and a bratwurst is made from pork and from veal, except when they're not, because people do what they want to do and they call it what they want to call it. If you are getting a knockwurst from Vienna instead of Germany, it would also have bacon in it. Really, it's kind of whatever we want to do. And so we're serving this with our Oktoberfest, so I thought you might want to have some. So we take our beautiful handmade Spaetzle. Okay. Ooh. Sorry, bee. Nope, that's a wasp. Good. All right. We're going to take our nice, cool, and crisp Krautsalat. And our knockwurst. Make it pretty. And this is our very simple but very elegant dish. This is homemade Spaetzle with Krautsalat and knockwurst. I hope you enjoy it.